that covers all aspects of life, relationship, and success. And I'm your host, Anna Elton, relationships expert and sexology expert. So we're here to join our guest, Lola van Ella. She is the award-winning burlesque dancer, performer. She was named the most influential burlesque performer in 2020 and the most naked TEDx presenter. Thank you for joining us. And let's talk about some spicy stuff.
I love it. Hello. Thank you for having me.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you start? Like, what do you do?
Sure. Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Well, my name is Lola van Ella. I have been a full-time burlesque performer, MC, speaker, teacher for about 20 years. And this is I've been creating shows and performing for basically my entire life. But burlesque, this sort of art form that I found, I've been doing now for 20 years, and it is beyond a full-time job. It's a calling, it's a purpose, and it goes beyond the sparkle. So I am a sparkly showgirl, but I also am a producer and a creator. So I do a lot of show direction, a lot of writing, and I'm also a singer. So there's a lot of there's just a lot going on all the time in my life. It's just a lot of travel and showbiz and constant hustle and go, 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 while trying to balance, life things as well.
That's amazing. So, burlesque, this is awesome. So, how did you get to burlesque? Is it something that you always wanted to do, or you just, started?
Yeah, well, I didn't know what burlesque was as a child. I mean, not that. I mean, it's obviously an adult art form, but I grew up understanding what showgirls were because my grandmother loves old Hollywood. So we would watch like MGM musicals and Busby Berkeley. And I remember seeing the musical Gypsy when I was really little. And if you don't know, that's a huge Broadway show and movie about the life of burlesque legend Gypsy Rose Lee. And so I kind of grew up with this idea of like sparkly ladies, and I thought that was really fascinating. And then as I got older, I became really interested in dance and music, specifically acting and singing. But I also loved dancing, and I just loved theatricality in general. And so I got into burlesque essentially via theater and performance arts and cabaret. I was doing musicals, and then a little bit later I was doing traditional cabaret where I was singing, old torch songs and jazz standards. And I didn't know burlesque was a possibility. I thought burlesque was part of, an old timey era. And then I learned that it was still a thing. And there was a brand new resurgence happening in the early 2000s of burlesque. And so when I learned I could do it, I thought, well, it was a light bulb moment for me. I remember singing all of these sort of like sexy kind of sassy songs from musicals and other things in cabaret, and Whatever Lola Wants, and I Want to Be Loved by You by Marilyn Monroe, all these kinds of songs. And I remember finding those really fun. And then I was invited to come see this brand new burlesque show that had just started. It was like this new thing. And I saw it and I knew instantly. It was like a thunder crash. It was like, that's your purpose. That's what you're supposed to do. And so I spoke to the manager and I started exactly 1 week later. And it was, looking back, absolutely insane that I tried to do that. It was just so wild of me to think that I could like pull that off. But I was young and I was very determined. And I also just really had something to prove to myself. And so that was it. I got costumed and started learning how to sing and dance and striptease at the same time. And it's been 20 years and I'm still going.
That's amazing. So it's really interesting. So you mentioned Marilyn Monroe, right? And our episode, I named after that movie with Marilyn Monroe, Some Like It Hot.
Oh, yes, exactly. Great film.
Yeah.
Great film. And they just made a Broadway show. I just saw the show on Broadway a few months ago, and it was really great. I love that. I love that story. I love that movie.
So, and I was just wondering, so burlesque, it's really risque, right? It's fun. Are you really confident? Is it something that you had to learn? Are you totally different at home than versus the stage? Like, I'm just,
Yeah. No, and this is a great question because I think depending on who you spoke to, people would answer differently depending on who the person is. Me personally, my stage persona and my real world persona are very much interlinked. They are married, they are not super separated. The biggest difference is that, when I'm on stage, when I'm in showbiz mode, I'm very much on, and it is a very over the top glamorous version of myself. But no, when I'm at home, I mean, I was not wearing this earlier. Okay. I knew I was going to be on on this show. So I definitely threw something on that was, that was a bit better than my yoga pants. But, but, burlesque is something that I really truly believe anybody who really wants to try can try. Being a stage performer, of course, takes a certain amount of confidence, but I will say that confidence is something I'm really fascinated with and I think a lot about. And I am very confident, but it doesn't mean that I always feel great about myself all the time. I've just really learned how to own it. I've learned how to own whatever stuff I'm going through, whether I'm feeling amazing or I'm feeling really terrible, which, life is a spectrum. It's all ups and downs. And I have learned that I am confident through the joys and the pains in my life. And I think that has been sort of like, that's the secret to, I don't know, getting on stage and bearing it all, or just whether that is your soul or your body. It takes a certain level of just kind of like ownership of your stuff,
Mhm.
yourself, your stuff, all the things around that. And so, yes, I would say I'm very confident, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. And it doesn't mean that I think, I've got it all figured out, because that is far from the truth.
Well, so what I was thinking about some clients that I have, right, or like women out there, and a lot of women are shy. So how can they learn this confidence? How do you think they can step outside of the comfort zone? What would be the first step if they want to bring that, confidence, burlesque, sexiness to their bedroom? What can you do?
Yeah, there's a few, I think, really accessible, simple things that anyone, women specifically, but truly any human being can do. And one of those, I mean, there's a few things. One is the first thing I said, which is like learning to own it. So
Mhm.
by owning it, I mean, like, again, it's not about when, it's about like now. I have a lot of women come to me and say, well, I could do burlesque if, and then they give me a bunch of excuses. If I was younger, if I was thinner, if I was taller, if my chest was a different size or my butt was a different size or what. I have heard everything. And my answer to all of that is no, you are great now. You can, of course, there's nothing wrong with always striving to grow and improve and do the things that you want to do for your health or your self-expression, but anybody can own what they've got going on. And so my first suggestion is to just like really work on owning it, whether that's having a mantra, you know, saying affirmations, but it really is about like radical self-acceptance, and it's about like loving yourself in the version that you're in. And I think some things that help with that are forcing yourself to look in the mirror, and I mean that like literally. Like being able to like really look at yourself and make eye contact with yourself and appreciate yourself. That's actually, I think, one of the hardest steps, but I think it's maybe the most radical steps, to just like recognize who you are and like what you love about yourself. And then like really intentionally seducing yourself, like allowing yourself to enjoy the skin you're in, finding things that make you feel beautiful, whether that's red lipstick or lingerie or high heels or fake eyelashes or anything that makes you feel more, your most feminine version of yourself. And everybody's different, but finding things that make you feel beautiful so that you can really like embody this sort of idea of like radical self love and self acceptance. It's a process, but I truly believe that every single person, and I will die on this hill, every person is capable of it if they're genuinely interested and willing into the idea of confidence and like feeling sexy, whether you're in the bedroom, in your mirror, or on a stage in front of a bunch of people. I really do believe that it starts with that. It starts with like radical self acceptance, which is hard,
Yep.
but
So
everyone's capable.
so it requires time and intention, right?
It does. It does. A lot of intention. Hmm.
And what I was thinking from the therapy perspective, right, from psychology perspective, the self-love, it's really tough, right? A lot of
Yeah.
women come in, and men as well, but I feel like a lot of women, they struggle with, self-love, self-acceptance. And then when they think about the body image, what
Yes.
they usually say, like, well, I can name all the things I don't like about myself, but it's really hard to name something I like. So that's when I usually tell them, look in the mirror and just tell me, like, is there anything, like your hair, your eyes, your nose, anything, right? What
Right.
is it? Your nails. Start
Yeah.
with something, and then
Anything.
and then
Yes.
keep building, right? And I feel like it's a great example of, actually you need to find yourself sexy, right? That's
Yes.
what happens. You need to seduce yourself. I love that, because
Yes.
I feel like that's the self desire sometimes is the barrier to intimacy in couples, especially long term couples, right?
Yes.
They don't feel sexy. They
Right.
want to be intimate with their partners.
Right. And it's true. I think that is a big missing piece is the self seduction. I think we are, especially women, we are so constantly reminded that we are supposed to be commodified, or that we are very objectified, and that objectification is in my opinion is not, I don't mind, like, I objectify myself all the time. I'm a burlesque dancer. I put myself on stage. I do strip teases. I'm very aware, but I think that there's this missing piece around the idea that you can do that for yourself.
Hmm.
And I think because we constantly feel like, well, we are only allowed to be sexy for our partner and not for ourselves. It's like we forget that we should be our first lover.
Hmm.
Our partner, our husbands, our wives, or whoever, they're of course incredibly important, but we have to be our first lover. We are the last person that we answer to. And so I know that self love and self acceptance are really hard, and I struggle with it just like anybody else, probably. But the difference, I guess, for me is that I kind of believe in this idea of, like, sometimes you just have to put it on like it's your favorite jacket. Like, there are days when I'm like, man, I am struggling with my love for myself. But I know that this is temporary, and I know that I have a job to do, and I want to go out there and, like, I want to be the best version of me I can. So even if I don't feel great, I'm still going to, like, own that I don't feel great, and I'm going to go out there anyway and just, like, lay it all out. And I think for myself, it's all about remembering to really give myself that kind of love and acceptance. And it does take work, but when you are able to find, even if it's just one thing, like you said, like your nails, your hair, anything that you love about yourself, you can slowly build on that. And I do think that that is at the very core what we should all be striving to do, which is just, seduce ourselves a little bit. We should be our first lover. I think it's actually incredibly important, and we forget that a lot.
Absolutely. So what I was thinking as we were talking, what if we start with something simple, right? If we have really hard time finding something that we like about ourselves, what if we start with maybe color? What's your favorite color?
Mhm.
Maybe that, and then that color can give you the confidence, and then you can start to look and say, like, wow, it really complements my complexion, right? It makes, like red lipstick, right? When you have red lipstick on, I feel more sexier. I feel more
Right.
confident.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. I've never even considered that one specifically. One of the things I've done in my classes is I make everybody one stand in the mirror, which I know is really challenging. And then I have everybody touch themselves. And it doesn't have to be, I know that sounds incredibly erotic, but it is erotic, but it doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily sexual. It's just about touching your own skin. There's this, I don't know, chemical reaction that happens when there's skin to skin contact. And we all know what that feels like. We know that there's, when you give someone a hug, it releases all these feel good chemicals. And so it's the same for ourselves. I feel like when we remind ourselves of how, like, soft and warm and, special that we are, I think sometimes just by touching ourselves, even if it's just stroking your own shoulder or feeling the skin on your hands or looking at your face and giving it a loving touch, in a way that is, like, comforting. in the way that a lover would, or a mother would, or somebody that you trust and value, that would, stroke your skin to reassure you. I often do that with my students. And with just burlesque dancers in general, we do a lot of touching of ourselves on stage. One, because it sends a not so subliminal message about, seduction, right? But also when we touch ourselves in any kind of loving way, it's reminding us of how special and warm and sacred our bodies are in that way. And I think that that's really lovely.
That's amazing. So what I was thinking is, so there's been a lot of studies, right, on the physical touch and the importance of it, right? And there's even this technique, 8-hug technique. So when you want to create the bond with someone, to be closer to someone, you need to give 8. I mean, you can start small. You can start maybe with 1 hug. So the hug needs to be 20 seconds.
Right.
So when you hug someone for 20 seconds, the love hormones, the oxytocin, endorphins are being released.
Right.
And it creates this bonding with that person. So as you were talking about touching yourself, right? So like maybe the same idea works with ourselves. So when we touch ourselves, we get the same hormone that helps us to connect with our inner self.
Yes.
Ourselves.
I love that. And I love that oxytocin. I love that study about what you just said. I find that so cool. I just love that we've learned these things. It's so fascinating. And ever since I heard that study, I have been more intentional about how long I hug people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously I wouldn't just do it to any random person, but when it's a really good friend of mine, I'm like, no, we need to hug for 20 seconds. Let's hold on to each other for just a little bit longer, because it's going to make us have feel good hormones, and chemicals and all that stuff. So I think about that a lot, actually, and about the importance of touch, because we are so touch starved in general as a species right now. I feel like we're so much more connected, on a digital level, but we're becoming more disconnected on a physical level. And so I try to be much, much more intentional about how often I hug my friends and my loved ones, because it really is it's so special to feel those good feelings.
Absolutely. And again, like speaking of studies, there's this more recent study that came out in 2024. The researchers were looking at the basketball players. And what they found that, the teams that are touching more during the game, they're more in sync and they play as a team better. So that's when I always bring to couples who come to see me that, touching is really, really important.
Yeah.
The more you touch each other, the more in sync you will be, and the better as team players.
I love that. That's really interesting. Yeah, I love that.
I was thinking to shift our conversation a bit and talk about couples.
Yeah.
Right? So again, going back to the research, what do we see?
Mm.
So what is sexless marriage, right?
Yeah.
It's 10 or less times of sex per year. So it's less than once a month. That's sexless marriage, right?
Yeah.
And again, the newest study that just came out January of 2025 is on sexual boredom. So when we hear all this diminished desire, low desire, right, and that's what brings correlates with relationship dissatisfaction, right? Low desire, low satisfaction in your relationship. But what's interesting in this new study that sexual boredom is actually more affects relationship dissatisfaction.
Right.
More than desire. So that's when couples need some excitement, when couples need to spice things up. That's why I was thinking about, this episode of like, what can we do, for couples, right? How can we support these couples? So
right.
What do you see? Like when you have the shows, do you see a lot of couples that have singles?
Oh, yes.
Who is coming to see the shows?
Well, I have to say, I'm very grateful that it's such a diverse mix of people, which is, my goal in general. I really want to reach everybody, but yes, a lot of couples, we have a lot of dates, lots of anniversaries. I've had married couples that have come to my show that have been together for 50 years, or and beyond, and newer couples, and really everything in between. And oftentimes, and sometimes when I get a chance, I'll ask them, what's the secret to your long marriage or to your happy marriage? And a lot of them say it's by keeping things interesting, by shaking things up, by doing something new, by, traveling together, or and again, everybody has different boundaries and different rules, but I've heard all kinds of things. But a common thing that I do notice is getting out of routine. It's like it's so easy. It's so easy to get stuck in a routine and to be complacent. I mean,
Mhm.
I definitely understand what that feels like and looks like. And I think a lot of times at my show and beyond in my work, a lot of what I hear is, we have a routine. It's comfortable, and when
Mhm.
things get really comfortable, sometimes they become so safe that the idea of shaking things up becomes foreign, totally foreign to them. And yeah, going to a burlesque show is just like one small tiny thing that people can do, right? But it's just an example of doing something that's a little bit wild and exciting and just and it shakes the routine up, and it celebrate especially when something celebrates sexuality and sensuality and playfulness. I think it inspires, hopefully, I mean, they've told me it does, but that it inspires a couple to go home and maybe, use that inspiration in the bedroom, and gosh, what an honor, what a gift, when I hear things like that. It's such a treat. I really love it.
So I was thinking about playfulness, right?
Mhm.
Because what happens with couples in long-term relationships, they lose that playfulness,
Right.
right? They forget how to flirt with each other.
It's true.
So, and then, so I've been seeing couples who's been married for 15, 20 years. And then when they come in, and usually the reason why couples come in, they all say communication. Of course, communication's a problem, but what are their underlying issues in communication, right? I mean, number one is finances. I mean, people struggle with finances, sure. Well, number two is intimacy, right? So, and then when I ask them, like, so what's going on? Usually they say, well, it's really predictable, or like we don't have sex too often, or like, what is sex? What's your definition of sex? Because sometimes they have different ideas of what sex is, right? Or, sometimes they say, like, well, it's just not passionate anymore, right? How can we bring the same passion as we had, beginning of the relationship? And going back to the intention, right? When we first start dating, we put a lot of intention into, being prepared for that date, anticipating the date, being excited about the date, right? And then when we are married or like long-term relationship, what happens? Okay, it's been a month, 2 months, 6 months. I guess let's do it. So it's
Right.
not exciting anymore, right? There's no play, there's no tease, right? There's no strip tease, nothing.
Right. No,
So
that's very true. Yeah.
what are like some of the like maybe playfulness? Is there any ideas, advices for how to flirt, how to be playful?
Yeah. No, it's such a common, it really is such a common problem. And I don't know if I have some like grand, amazing wisdom about it, but I will say that I do think that the couples who are the happiest are the ones who find ways to play together. And I think that spontaneity is such a important part of playfulness is, allowing yourself to be open to the possibility of anything. And that doesn't mean you don't have to have good boundaries or any of that stuff, but it just means like being open-minded. And yeah, I mean, I think you can add play into your life in so many ways. I think dancing together is such a wonderful thing to do, whether you are a dancer or not, but moving your bodies together to music when you're cooking dinner or, just hanging out, when you go out for drinks, moments to connect physically, especially in a non-sexual way, but that are still like erotic or seductive or intimate, are really important. And so there's a playfulness in that. I think, finding ways to incorporate just closeness in general, especially when people both enjoy something that's the same.
Mhm.
My partner and I will sometimes be like, let's go, like, we'll do like really random things, like, let's go play mini golf, or like, oh, let's go visit our friend, like, let's go see this poetry reading that our friend is doing. And they wouldn't necessarily be things that we would normally do, but we're like, oh, we've been stuck in this house together for like a week. We really need to get out and do something fun. We needed an excuse to dress up,
Mhm.
or I need an excuse to do some makeup or like put on a cute dress. and actually treat each other like we're on a date. I think that's like a really lovely thing to be able to do, is to go on dates where you actually act like it's a date. I think when you're with someone for a really long time, even dates are just like, we're just together, we're like doing the same thing we always do. But if you can figure out a way to kind of make it more playful, role play, pretend like you're meeting for the very first time, I think things like that are actually like really, really fun and very special.
And I feel like when we're, first meet someone, or like when we're younger, right? We have this happiness, playfulness. And then as we get older, we just get so stuck in that routine, right? That
Yes.
we get to have fun. And I feel like the couples who can make through the years, they still have fun. Or
Yes,
bring themselves to that place of like, hey, what's the point if we're not having fun?
exactly. Yeah, I completely agree.
So, what else I was thinking to talk about? I know you were on TED Talk.
I was.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean,
Well, it was a long time ago. I did it 10 years ago, and, it was 10 years ago almost exactly 10 years ago. And they found me, which was very amazing. They reached out to me and said, "We would like you to come and have a meeting with us and talk about a possible, a possible TED Talk." And I went to the meeting assuming I had the job. Like, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this." Like, I was so excited. I didn't realize that they were saying, like, "You're gonna come and have a glass of wine with us, and then we're gonna discuss the possibility." I was like, "No, no, no, no." I went in with the mindset, "I'm doing this."
mhm.
And so I went in, we had the meeting, and afterwards they said, "Well, great. Um, we'll be in touch and find out if you're, we'll decide if like if you're still interested in possibly doing it, we can just." And I said, "No, no, 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 no." I'm doing this. And I think they were kind of taken aback by my insistence and my directness, that they were like, "Oh no, she's doing it." And so, yeah, it was, I got to come up with the entire thing on my own. They just essentially invited me as who I am. They knew it would be about burlesque,
Mhm.
but they weren't sure if I was going to just perform at the event, or if I would actually be the presenter. And I told them, "No, no, no, no. I'm definitely going to present." And I was just so excited because it was this huge challenge for me. And so I did a talk essentially on, it was kind of about the history of burlesque, and about how burlesque relates to my life and to being a woman and to the feminine divine. But really, it was also about the Madonna whore juxtaposition, which, as I'm sure most of us know, is this idea that women can either be one or the other. They are either, seen as this sort of, motherly, virginal, pure girl next door kind of idea, or they are not, and they can neither, never the two shall meet. And so and it obviously, we still struggle with this in this society to this day. I hear it all the time, but I did a talk basically on explaining and discussing my passion for the idea that women can be
Both.
anything and everything, not just both, but
Mhm.
all of the things beyond. Yeah, but definitely both. Because I think a lot of the times, women are told, well, now that you're a mom, or you're a teacher, or you're any kind of profession, you better hang up those sexy heels and those fishnets, and you can't wear that red lipstick anymore. And I just wholeheartedly, vehemently disagree with that.
Mhm.
I think mothers and teachers and every other profession, any woman deserves to and is still a seductive, erotic, feminine, sexual being. And the idea of stripping people's agency away from that just really pisses me off, to be perfectly honest. And so my TED Talk was basically kind of about that. It was about this idea that this woman, um, I am funny, and I am smart, and I am sexy, and I am interesting, and I am all of these things wrapped into one package. And I'm allowed to be all of these things at once. And so that was basically what the TED Talk was about. And my other goal was that, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to strip while giving the talk. so that by the end of it, I can then tell everybody that I am officially, and I think, I don't know if anyone's beat me, the most naked TED Talk presenter of all time. I've looked it up. I don't know if anyone has ever done it. I kept it burlesque, but I don't know if anyone has gone more sparkly and naked than me. I I was proving it to myself, and I'm pretty sure I did it. Maybe someone has at this point. If they have, more power to them. But I was on a mission when I did that.
Wow, that's amazing. So was it something that pushed you to step outside of your comfort zone, or this is where you wanted to prove the point to yourself, to others?
Both. I think I know that deep down, I know I'm always just trying to prove something to myself. I'm my own biggest sort of competition. I'm always like, what can I do to step it up even further and to elevate what I'm doing? And when I got the call that I was going to get to do the TED Talk, I felt this fire to really make something I was proud of. And I went out there with this goal. I really just wanted people to understand burlesque. And not just burlesque, but I wanted them to understand that striptease and sexuality and sensuality and all of these kinds of things they're okay, that it's not, doesn't need to be taboo, that we can discuss this like adults. And I have to say, I was actually very pleasantly surprised because it got a really, really wonderful response. And I had parents, specifically parents and teachers, come up to me afterwards and said that they really appreciated the message, because a lot of my messaging was about, allowing people to choose who they want to be and not letting society try to pigeonhole and box people up. And so there was a lot of that messaging in there. And so it felt definitely like I felt like I had to prove a point for sure, especially as a woman, especially as a young woman who was constantly, spoken down to, or I would go to meetings and they would assume that I didn't know what I was talking about, or they would always ask if I had a man with me, they would always look at the man and not look at me and ask him questions and not me. And I just was like, no, I'm so sick of this. And I feel like I need to really stand up and say something when I have the microphone. I'm gonna say my piece. No one's gonna put me in a corner.
That's awesome. No one puts the baby in the corner, right?
Mm.
So
Exactly.
when I was actually creating the flyer for today's show, I put the box, and then we are standing outside of the box. If you look back, and again, like I always like this, different associations, and that's where like I use the Marilyn Monroe, for Some Like It Hot, also the jazz music associated with New Orleans. That's where I met you, right? But also the box, right? We are breaking the barriers. We're stepping outside of the box.
Exactly. Exactly. And anybody can, I encourage everybody. I'm like, do something that makes you just slightly uncomfortable. Do the thing that scares you. Just be bold. Make bold. My tagline, or not my tagline, but the most common thing that I say that all of my friends tease me about, because it's definitely my catchphrase, which is make strong choices. I tell everybody to make bold choices, make strong choices, make a choice, but make it bold. Really commit to the bit, go all the way in. Do not go quietly into the night. That's kind of how I feel about life in general.
But it's so interesting, right? Because I feel like as we grow and become adults, we have all these rules set for us, or we set for ourselves, right? When you
Yes.
finish college, right, you need to start dressing up certain way, right? And I remember when I was just graduate with my undergrad, I went to change my clothes. I said like, I don't have any suits. Maybe I need pants. Maybe I need, the big girl clothes, right? Because now I'm an adult, right? Now I'm a
Right.
professional, which was interesting. And then at some point I was thinking, well, if I maintain my blonde hair, maybe no one will take me seriously. But I said, this is me, this is how I feel comfortable. And I don't want anyone to tell me how it's supposed to look like,
Yeah.
right? And I remember I was told like, well, once you turn 30, you can't have blonde hair. I was like, why not? You can dress a certain way, right? Once you're a mom, and I have 3 kids,
Yeah.
you can't wear a pink bikini. I was like, well, now I have 5 pink bikinis. I
Good
have
for
choices
you.
because I don't want people to tell me what to do.
Exactly. exactly. No, and it's all just silly. It's just these silly little, who made these rules? I mean, it's just so ridiculous to me. And I often remind myself and everybody that I speak to that a lot of the times when you catch yourself feeling judgmental or uncomfortable with the way someone looks or presents, I always, and it happens to all of us.
Mhm,
We all have hidden biases. We all
mhm,
have things that we need to unlearn and unpack. But I often try to remind myself and everybody around me, I'm like, ask yourself why this is bothering you, because it probably is your problem.
yeah,
It's like this idea that, and again, and usually we extend this more to women than men. That's just
mhm,
a fact. We live in a society that has a lot of rules about the way women are supposed to behave. And we really, really give women that are louder and bolder a much harder time. And we call them all kinds of
mhm,
names, that they're difficult or they're rude or whatever. And I just think it's just so important that we check ourselves on that, because I see so many insecurities come out in comment sections online when it's about a woman who's expressing herself in any way.
mhm,
Blonde hair, or the bra that she's wearing, or the
mhm,
outfit, or the lipstick. I mean, it's just never ending. And at the end of the day, I'm like, this is about you. This is a
mhm.
reflection of you and the way you were raised, and the biases that you have, or the insecurities that you hold because someone said something horrible to you that you did not deserve. And I really, I think about that stuff a lot. I think a lot about how important it is for me to live as loudly and boldly as I can, because life is short and I certainly do not want to adhere to some ridiculous societal and specifically patriarchal standard of what a woman, especially a woman who is aging, what she's supposed to look like and behave like. I just have no tolerance or time for people's opinions on my body. I don't care.
It's so interesting. So there's this, I guess, a lot of studies done on power of suggestion, right? So that's when we hear something, right, and then it stays with us.
Yeah.
And there's one story, right? So when I was maybe 9, 10, um, I loved yellow color, right? And it was my happy color. I would always wear it. And then someone told me, hey, listen, I don't think it's your color. I don't think it complements your complexion. So at some point, I noticed that I started wearing yellow less and less. And then I would say maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago, that's when I realized that I had no yellow in, my wardrobe. And I went to the store with my youngest son, and he was maybe 4 at the time. And I was looking for a new dress, and he picked up the yellow dress and he said, like, try this on. It would look really good on you. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not going to try this yellow dress. It's not my color. He's like, why not? I was like, I don't know. Why not? And that's when I started thinking. I was like, where did they even get this idea that yellow is not my color? So then I intentionally bought a couple of yellow things and I started wearing them. And I was like, wow, this is actually my happy color. I look really good in yellow. And then at that point, I started looking more into the whole idea of power suggestion, right?
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
Right. And then, we hear certain messages and then it stayed with us, as we're growing up, we hear it from parents or friends or someone else, right? We see it on social media all the time, right? We compare ourselves and usually it's not a good comparison, right? And then
Exactly.
we're kind of like, okay, so now we have all these insecurities built up.
Right.
What's interesting is we can also change it by out of suggestions, right?
Right.
That's when going back to that mantra and positive affirmations, reminding ourselves we are worth it. We are enough, right? We're amazing. We're beautiful. We're bold, right?
Right.
All the things that we can tell ourselves.
Right. Yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, that my affirmation, the mantra that I offer to my students that I've taught and to myself, is you are strong, you are capable, you are worthy, because those are facts. I believe. I think we are all strong, capable, and worthy of whatever it is, whatever challenges, whatever we need, whatever we desire. I do think that we are capable and strong and worthy of those things. And to me, it's an important reminder for myself because again, we are the power of suggestion. There's a lot of messaging that goes against those feelings. And I, I had a lot of, I grew up with a lot of different insecurities and a lot of different struggles that I had when I was younger. And it took me, I love that story about your yellow dress because when I first started, when I started teaching my confidence class, it was after a horrendous breakup that I was going through. It was just the worst breakup I'd ever been through. And it was just, it was just so heartbreaking. And I really had never felt lower. I felt like I wasn't pretty enough, that I wasn't young enough, that I would never find anybody else to love me in the same way, that I would probably never be in love again. I mean, it was unbelievable the things that I was suggesting to myself. And it took me essentially hitting rock bottom. I mean, I was literally crying on the floor and just thinking like, this is awful. I'll never be happy again. All because and I don't even blame my ex. I blame them for something. So I don't hold any resentment. I learned a lot of lessons from that relationship. But one of the things that I really struggled with after that relationship was this feeling of worthiness. Because through that breakup, I felt I wasn't worthy. And I had convinced myself I wasn't worthy. And so I have worked really hard on thinking about what it means to give yourself the love and acceptance and the joy that you deserve, and that it doesn't come from anybody else but yourself. Like, sure, people can affirm you and reassure you and validate you, but at the end of the day, like, you're the last person that you say goodnight to every night. You're the last person that you see. And so I've worked really hard, and it's not just uphill, there's dips and valleys and, highs and lows, but I have really thought a lot about what it means to continuously, almost like lovingly bully myself to be like, you are good enough. You deserve love. You deserve respect. You deserve appreciation. And it doesn't mean that you are absolved of your problematic things that you do or your toxicity, because we all go through phases, but you are still lovable and valuable and worthy no matter what phase that you're in. And it's about accepting that so that you can do the work to become the best version of yourself. I think about that stuff a lot.
It's so interesting, right? We are the biggest bullies to ourselves, right?
We really are. Yeah, if you're going to bully yourself, you might as well bully yourself into how great you are. Because it's true. We are so mean to ourselves. It's just awful.
So one thing that I always say, and it's a playful way. So, whenever you have a low day, right, things are not going okay, or just like remind yourself that, things will be better. So I ask myself, who is awesome? And then I say, I'm awesome. Who is awesome? I'm awesome. So this is where like you come up with your own mantra, right? And then you remind yourself, hey, listen, you're awesome. And then of the day, nothing matters. You're awesome. And then things will be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Mine is usually also, it's like, if this is all temporary, this feeling, whether it's good or bad, it's temporary. This too shall pass. So you might as well just lean in so that you can go through it to get to it. Like it's all a process. It's all constantly learning and growing, and healing never ends. It just never ends.
So, and what's interesting, right? What I tell my clients, whenever you're in that low moment, right, you need to remind yourself what's going well, and also think of your stable, right? There must be something that is stable in your life. Find that stable, and that's how you can recenter, reground yourself.
Right.
Right. And you build on that, right? You can like, well, this is going well. Well, we can get things, other things that go well, right? And then we can work towards that.
I love that. Yeah.
So let me shift our conversation just a bit more. So can you tell me a little bit about your partner, right? Is he supporting you? Like, how is that? Is your work affecting your relationship or actually complements your relationship?
Okay, so this is very interesting because my partner is a sex therapist.
Okay.
Yes, and she has been a therapist for probably about a well, oh gosh, it's been probably 7 or 8 years
Mhm.
now. I mean, she was doing a little bit before, but then really ramped it up in the last like 8 years or so. And then she became one of the only, I think it's grown since then, but she became one of the first certified sex therapists in Louisiana and well, definitely in New Orleans. I could be getting this wrong, so I don't want to say something wrong. But I know that when she got her certification, it was pretty new. And so when I met my partner, she was not doing therapy actively yet. She was working mostly in social work and doing a lot of stuff in different various programs. But then she started to transition into her therapy work. And that has actually been a really fascinating dynamic because dating a therapist is a whole vibe. And I'm sure you could, really expound on that. But I will say I have learned so much about communication because of my partner. I have learned so much about processing my feelings. My partner is a very good therapist and has kept clients for a very long time. So I know that she knows what she's talking about. But there's challenges that come with that because sometimes I'm very strong person, and sometimes I don't want to be told what to do. I don't need to process my feelings in that moment. So it's been a really fascinating relationship because there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of readjusting. But I will say that my partner and I have a very amazing foundation in that she is the biggest cheerleader I've ever had in my life, and she supports my career 100%. And her family even also has embraced me fully in that way. They all know what I do for a living. They all love it. They've all seen my show. They've all come to the show that you saw. That her sister, her mom, and her dad. And she not just supports me, but she's really roots for me. She sees how hard I work, and she tells me all the time that she really is proud of me and that she is very impressed by how hard I work. And I feel the same about her. I see how hard she works. I see the good that she brings to people's lives. And when I met her, I was already teaching my confidence classes and these other things that, of course, I am not a therapist, but I think they come from a holistic sort of therapeutic approach. But I would never claim, I don't have any sort of paperwork behind that. It's from my own learning and my own process. But working with my partner is actually very affirming because she's been able to kind of say, yeah, no, what you're talking about is absolutely studied. This is a thing. And also, here's some other things that you can do. And so it's been really, it's actually been really lovely. We've grown a lot together, and I've learned so much from my partner. And my partner is a very strong person who's had to, go through a lot of struggles growing up as somebody who is not, in the traditional way that a lot of society accepts people. And so I'm very amazed by her tenacity and by her. She's just one of the most authentic people I've ever met in my life. And she is also incredibly confident. She knows exactly who she is, and no one can put her in a corner either. So yeah, she's great. And my partner is really incredible, and I feel very, very supported by them.
That's great. So, is there one thing that you learned from your partner that you can share with our viewers?
Um, oh gosh, there's so many. Um, one thing I will say, one thing that's been incredibly valuable to learn is that feelings are just feelings and they're temporary
Mhm.
and they don't have to ruin anything. So I have a lot of big feelings. I'm a very emotional person. I I can get really when I'm sad, I get really sad, and when I'm happy, I'm very happy. Um, but will sometimes feel guilt around that. Like if I'm very sad in front of my partner, I think, oh God, this is going to ruin our entire night. And one of the things I've learned from her is, and she often reminds me, is she's like, no, 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 feel your feelings. This is okay. We're going to feel them now so that we can just move on with our night. This doesn't have to ruin everything. And so I've learned from my partner that when you're able to just confront things head on, the sooner you can confront it and feel it, the easier it is to move through it. And I've also learned on that same exact coin that you don't always have to confront it immediately. Is another thing I learned from my partner is that just because you're feeling a type of way doesn't mean it has to turn into a fight. And I've learned that if I'm upset about something, sometimes it just means I need to go take space. And then I come back and I'm totally fine and we don't even need to have a conversation about it. And she's the exact same way. She'll be in a bad mood. I'll be like, what's wrong? I'll push. Tell me what's going on. And she'll say, actually, I really don't want to. And I think I'm just going to go spend 5 minutes alone or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. I'm going to call a friend. And when I come back out here, we're going to just enjoy our evening. So I would say that I've learned about regulating, regulating and knowing that, everything is temporary and to take your time. Take your time with your feelings. It's all real, but it's all temporary.
I totally agree with that. So that's when I'm thinking all emotions are okay, right?
Right.
As long as you're able to express them in a safe way. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Safe for yourself and safe to others.
That's so, yes. Clearly, it's funny. You say so many of the same things because she's always like, let's just be vulnerable with each other. You can just express this. It doesn't mean that it has to turn into anything. Let's just talk about it and then move forward.
And what's so interesting, taking the break, right? Taking that space is super, super important because what happens when we have these big emotions and we start thinking and then we start spiraling, right? And then we're at the point of reactive mind, right? Not the calm mind. And then when in reactive mind, we get so stuck in that cycle.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we take that break, right? And then calm yourself down. So what I was telling my couples, you can actually come up with a code word whenever you feel like you need to take a break or whenever you feel like your partner is getting a little too escalated and he or she needs to take a break, you can use a code word, right? And usually the most frequently used code word is bananas. I mean, you can come up with your own, but this is when you take the break and you know when to come back, right? So you set the rules. You say like, okay, we take 20 minutes, 30 minutes off, 1 hour, right? And then we calm ourselves down. So we go to our safe place, right? We think of like what helps us to calm down, right? Is it, listening to music? Is it reading? Is it doing the, I don't know, deep breathing or anything else, right?
Right.
Just make sure you don't go on social media because it can actually do the opposite effect. So whenever you go on social media and scrolling, so you're upset with your partner, you're upset with yourself, you're so unhappy, and then you go on social media, you scroll and you see all this happy people, dates, vacation,
Right.
accomplishments, and then what makes you feel good, so you brings yourself down, right? You're kind of like, well, they all having a good time and I'm not. So that's when instead of doing that, calm yourself down, maybe scroll through your phone, look at the happy photos with you and your partner, and that can help you to bring yourself back to that more neutral space.
It's a really good piece of advice because that is a hard one, not to immediately like dissociate by staring at your phone. That's a struggle. That is a hard one. That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, and then that's when couples come in, and then when I start interviewing them, and I said like, so what was the next thing? Like, so you had a fight, what did you do? And then they say like, well, I went on my phone, right? Or sometimes when you take that break, some couples keep texting, and that's a problem because you did not take a real break, right? You continue the conversation out through text,
right?
Which removes that layer of the tone and face, and now it's just someone that you're upset at.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Mm-hmm. Good advice.
But again, just remind yourself that like, hey, listen, my partner has a good intention. I have this feeling right now, and that's okay, right? It will pass, and then we'll come and we'll talk.
Yeah. Yes. Space is so important. I think I never really realized like how quickly codependent, or not even just codependent, but this idea that we just have to always be in the same room, or you have to talk about it right then and there. No, we need to discuss this now. We can't move forward. And there's something so valuable about walking away and not and letting that be good. It's not just space isn't just to take a breather. It's like really to regroup and to find balance and to check on yourself. I think it's really valuable. And I never even realized how valuable it was until, I think, growing and getting older and, being in a long-term relationship, you start to recognize, oh yeah, space is very valuable. To get perspective. Perspective is the big gift there. It's like you can't get perspective on any problem unless you get space.
Absolutely. So as we start wrapping up the show, let's go back and review all the things that we learned today. So let's talk about seduction, confidence, playfulness, teasing. Can you give us a little bit more pieces of advice? What can we take away from today's show?
Yeah. Just remember that you're your first lover, really and truly. And as silly as that might sound, or as difficult as that might feel to access, there is nothing better than loving yourself first. It is a glow that will come from within you, and it is not connected to any superficial thing, from age to size, anything. It's not about the way you look at all. It is truly an inner work that you have to do. And so I would say find something that you can love yourself for, and then try to grow and blossom that seed into something, because there is something so beautiful. You can see it on people. And it's contagious too. And so if you can find playfulness with yourself, whether that be dressing up or dancing around in your underwear in your living room, or looking at yourself in the mirror and, putting on a really gorgeous, glamorous face, or taking sexy photos of yourself, anything, any kind of self-seduction technique, touching your skin, doing that as a practice, giving yourself a challenge to do it on a regular basis, whether that be once a week or certain times of the day, whatever that is, will help you find ways in which to connect, not just with yourself, but with the other people in your life. So if you start to really seduce and love yourself, that will turn you on, and it'll probably make you feel like you want to turn on your partner. But I can tell you, if I'm really feeling myself, then that's probably going to travel home with me when I see the person that I love. And I'm going to want to flirt with them. I'm going to want them to get a little bit of what I've been feeling about myself. And I think ritualizing your life can help with that. Finding ways to pamper yourself, whether that be taking a luxurious bath or drinking a glass of wine under your tree in your backyard, whatever it is, but little rituals that you can find to romanticize your life are really beautiful, just really beautiful. And I do think that they ripple out into connecting with your partner and with your other loved ones, with your friendships. Really, it gives you a sense of presence, I think, and mindfulness about your own sense of self.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are a bunch of things I think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. And I was thinking, I guess my piece of advice would be how to maintain that spark in a relationship, right? And this is where you need to make sure that you intentionally, touching, hugging, right? Being nice to each other, right? You need to make sure that you're giving each other compliments, right? That you're acknowledging each other's efforts, and then being playful with each other, right? And then you just walk by your partner, just touch your partner, right? And show a little shoulder, right? Just laugh with your partner. Because what happens in a relationship, how do we come from passionate lovers to just roommates, or two passing ships, right? When you stop interacting with each other, right? When you stop looking in each other's eyes, right? And then think of the car, right? Now you mentioned it's really cold in New Orleans, right? It's snowing. And then think of I'm thinking of New England. Originally, I lived in New England, and then it was always cold. So what do you know if you live in a cold place, you need to warm your car, right? You can't just get in the car and start driving because it will not gonna go so well, right? So
Right.
same with intimacy, with relationship, you need to make sure that you're keeping it warm, right? You warm it up. If you want to be intimate in the evening, maybe you need to be playful through the day, right? So get in the mood, get in that flow.
Yeah. 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 Agreed.
So, and as we're closing, is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers?
Just thank you. And, burlesque and all of these, the way that you found me was by watching a show that celebrates the joys of sensuality
Mhm.
and sexuality, and that doesn't have to be a once in a blue moon kind of thing. I think celebrating what makes us human is always accessible and beautiful if you are open to it. And so I encourage everybody to be exploratory and to never ever give up the idea that you are always worth the time. You are always worth the time it takes to find something new and exciting about yourself because, oh my goodness, are just a vessel for all kinds of just beautiful things. And so constantly being on the discovery and exploring that it's just wonderful.
Thank you. And I
Yeah.
guess let's give our viewers a little challenge. So, what is one thing that you can remind yourself? What could be your mantra, right? The positive mantra. How can you be playful? Just think of that one thing, and then maybe one thing that you can do with your partner that brings excitement and something new to this relationship.
Yeah.
So, just think of that one thing. But
Yes.
thank you for coming. Thank you for
You.
sharing all your advices and stories and expertise. It's been absolutely amazing,
Thank
and thank you for being with us. And I will talk to you soon again. Thank you, and
you.